we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. For God knew his people in advance, and he chose them to become like his Son, so that his Son would be the firstborn with many brothers and sisters. As we've gone over these last couple weeks, there's sort of a building block here. We're trying to build one on the other. So the first week we just talked about this idea that you're called, that God has a purpose for you. And then 2 weeks ago we talked about the reality that Christ loves you. Understand that you do have a place in God's story, that he does have a place for you in what he desires. And then last week we talked about belonging. We talked about being a part of a church, being a part of the God's family, and that there's a responsibility that we have and a privilege that we have. And this morning, our third point, our third life calling is simply this, is to become like Christ. And really that's, in some terms, theologically we call that sanctification. The idea of moving into things that God desires for us, and working through what that means. And it's interesting that, and I want to draw on the analogy of not so much running, because I've never run, or at least I've never really tried it, because I can't really do that. But even like bike riding, like the idea of the Twizzler that I did, the Twin Sizzler, I guess it's called actually in Medina. It's hard stuff. And yet there's something about doing it. Of course, the picture, I guess I can go back to that and show that. I mean, here's the bummer. They do it by age group, and so you start out and you're in your own age group. So I'm in the 50 to 59-year-old age group, okay? Don't tell my mom I told you that, okay? Just because she struggles with that. But the idea is, would you believe that that's the largest age group in this race, is the 50 to 59-year-old? It's like, really? I'm thinking, I'm 57, I can do this. This is not a problem. Until I show up and I get on the front line, that's the best picture there is of it, because from that point I just, I was at the end. But the idea of leaning into it and enjoying, actually the guy that's in sort of 129 there, it's like third from the right, his name is Jim Sloan, and Jim has become a good friend, and he's one of the guys I cycle with on a regular basis. But the idea is that when we look at running, and actually it's interesting that in the New Testament, God gives the term running for the Christian life as a metaphor 5 different times. And so, the question I want us to answer this morning is, how do I become what God calls me to be? And we're going to look at one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, which is Hebrews chapter 12. And actually it's kind of interesting. There's 8 points this morning, which there's actually, when you run a marathon, which I've never done, but there's actually 8 points that you push through in a marathon. First of all, you start out with excitement. That's mile 1. Mile 5, you're like in denial, and it's sort of denial in the sense that I think I can do this, I got this, I think I can win this, to the point where mile 11 you're going, what have I done to myself? It's called shock. And then mile 16, out of the 26 miles, so you're a little bit more than halfway, you're going, usually you're by yourself. That's like when I had my flat tire almost. It's like, really, you're out here in the middle of nowhere. And then you hit at mile 19, despair. It's like, I'm just going to drop over here and they can bury me and put flowers up alongside the road. Mile 22 in a marathon is called the wall. And any marathon will tell you that when they hit the wall, it's like, I can't go any farther. And then there's something about mile 23, that magic 23, that as they push into it, there's actually this affirmation. It's like, I can do this. And then finally you get to mile 26.2, and it's like, yes, I've done it. And so in those same 8 points, there is this Christian journey that we have. But I want to start out, and we heard this downstairs this morning. The first point, and this will be interesting for us to wrestle through, is that you need to simplify your life. It's about less is more. And so I want to suggest, even in the life of the church, less is more. So as we think through our summer calendars, we think through the fall calendar, it's not about like loading up the calendar to keep ourselves busy. That we really have to, we need to clean out the clutter. We need to become focused, as was my word for the year, to get rid of unnecessary baggage, to eliminate what might be diversions or distractions or detours, or what really is sort of time wasters. The writer of Hebrews says this: let us strip off anything that slows us down or holds us back, and especially those sins that wrap themselves so tightly around our feet and trip us up. And let us run with patience the particular race that God has set before us. Because you see, he says there's this thing that weighs us down or holds us back. I mean, when you get ready, it's seriously, when you ride a serious bike race, when you watch these guys that do the Tour de France, I mean, they're concerned about how heavy the cable is that runs their brakes and their derailleurs, how heavy the rubber is that's in the tires. Because it's all about the friction, and it's all about those things that cause reduction of speed. Because they're trying to push through it. So if you think about what weighs us down, and you don't wear a parka when you're running the marathon, and yet at the same time, there's these expectations, if you will, that we need to have for ourselves, the writer says. Part of stripping off is refusing to run other people's races, that you can't be what everyone else wants you to be, that you need to be what God is calling you to be. So my question is, what's holding you back from running your race? What are some things that you need to drop? And, on your worship notes, maybe there's one thing this week that you could just say right now, okay, I'm just going to let that sit by the wayside. It's going to become one of those things that I'm going to leave undone. Because that's really the task in our lives, is to figure out what things that we can leave undone, because we think it's all about being busy and not really about what God desires for us. Even as we heard in Sunday school, somebody said, I think Rick Warren in the book had something about people. What was it, Dennis? About reading the Bible? More people.
Oh, how many people read the newspaper every day?
Right.
Without fail.
Right.
Yet many times forget to read the Bible.
Right. And the truth is, there's all these great tools. If you've got a smart device, actually YouVersion, one of the apps that you can download, they will send you an email, and then they actually have, these guys are really smart, that they'll remind you to read your Bible verse, and then if you forget to read your Bible verse, there's actually a link in the Bible plan that says catch me up, and it actually then resets everything. So like if you missed a day, it's like, because sometimes that's overwhelming, you miss something, you're like, well, okay, I've already missed days 2, 3, and it's like, no, we know that, so just hit reset, and it means you can go back and start over again, sort of get a do-over, get to do it again. Okay, so the second point then is simply this, is don't get impatient or in a hurry. And so even I want to suggest this morning, as we think about where we are as a church. And I know in conversations with some of you, it's like, okay, where's the plan? What's the agenda? What's the calendar? Where are we at next month? Where are we at 6 months? Where are we at 2 years from now? Where are we at 5 years from now? And it's like, I think some of it has to be that we have to wait on God. And we have to not be in a hurry. That we simplify our life. And then if we sit and not be impatient. The idea is like riding a bike. Again, because of just my experience in it. I know that if I start out of the gate leaving from Ashland High School on a normal Wednesday night ride with the guys from the cycling club, if I burn out of the driveway and try to keep going with the young bucks, the guys who are a couple of firemen who can ride really, really fast, I know that if we're doing 30 miles, that the last 15 miles is going to be a total disaster. And so we have to pace ourselves. And part of it, and to be very truthful, in the life of this church, one of the things that we have to realize is that we're all doing a lot. We're all wearing a lot of hats. And the thing that we need to figure out is how do we invite, and this is something we have to pray together, how do we invite others into that? How do we invite others who don't know God's story, who are living in the shadows of this building, or people that we're at the YMCA with, or we see at Starbucks, or we see at Bob Evans, or we see in other contexts, to invite them into being part of doing what that video, the idea of launching people out into ministry, to actually think about mission trips and to think about doing things, not just in the community. As a couple of our students, Libby and Ryan and I went down Friday afternoon and spent a couple hours at the DeWalt Center, hanging out. Every Friday, they do this thing called the Teen Zone. And it's just a great time. And I was so blessed just to be there because they take time in the midst of doing everything. One of the most impressive things was a time of where all the students, as they sat around on the couches there in Doc's place, were invited to lay out joys and celebrations, concerns and things that they want to pray about. And then one of the students just led them through a time of deep prayer. And you know what? It was a page and a half of center notes. It was like, he's like, oh, this is going to take a while. And it did take a while. And it took away from other things they wanted to do in terms of play, but I just thought, how cool is that? And then we spent the rest of the time trying to, because teens and sometimes serving, it's like give them buckets of water and sponges, and there's work that can be done, but there's also mischief, you follow me? I mean, which is okay, that's all right, the joy of that. And I think the place looks much better than it did when we went in. I mean, I think we finally got, so the scrunches and whatnot that we didn't clean up the floor with. But Paul wants us to, the writer of Hebrews wants us to understand that we need to run with patience the particular race that God has set before us. And so I love the way the verse says that, the particular race. What is it that we are called to be on the Miracle Mile? We aren't called to be downtown. We're called to be in this neighborhood. And as we think about even the time that we're going to be together on Saturday doing spring cleanup, what's that say to our neighbors? And I know, make sure we don't cut down a tree or check out a bush, because I think that's created a problem or two. But the idea, we want the place to be attractional. We want people to feel as though this is a place that we welcome them to. And so it was even cool Friday afternoon as I stopped by here for a moment to see Dr. DeWald out power washing this fence, which is like the first thing I noticed after coming here months ago. Was like, can we do something about that fence? And if you go out today, you'll actually, we haven't put a coat of paint on it yet, which is what the students are going to do, but it looks great. Just because the lichens or the moss or whatever was there is gone. But I think that also the thing we need to understand, the idea of becoming is, there's a process to that. There's a progression, that it doesn't happen overnight. And so if you look at where we've been over these last couple weeks, I'm trying to give you baby steps. I'm trying to lay a foundation that I think God's laid upon my heart as I lead you of, so even like last week, inviting those of you that haven't joined this church to think about or would be interested in joining, to be invited into a conversation about what does that look like. And even what we're inviting you to be a part of as I'm formulating that, and we're going to extend an invitation for a couple more weeks, and then we'll pull a class together. I was excited that last week 2 folks said, hey, I'm in. Tell me more about how to take that next step. But here's what's core to it. And if you remember, those of you that came to my sort of neutral pulpit, I talked about abiding in Christ. That none of this can happen unless this happens. That we need to spend time focusing on Jesus every day. That it's not about like that list of stuff, bake sales and bulletins. It's all things that we can fill our life with. That stuff is secondary. That what's primary in our own spiritual walk is, are we spending time with the God that loves you? And are you hearing His call upon your life about how you carry that out in the context of our community? The writer of Hebrews again says, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, on whom our faith depends from start to finish. So you see, it's complete. That it's really about who Jesus is. And I don't know for you, that maybe what you need to do, because this is what Jesus did. Jesus went out as usual, which means it's something He did on a regular basis, the word usual, to the Mount of Olives to pray. I mean, maybe you need in your home, and now that the weather's changed a little bit, maybe it's your back deck, to get up 10 minutes early, or get up 15 minutes early, or come home from work a couple minutes early if possible, to take the shorter route, or somewhere where you can stop, pull off, and actually just spend 10 minutes reading through God's Word for you, just like Jesus did. And if you're willing to lean into that, I'm confident that there's something about your story that God will enhance and will bring about. Okay, 4th point. When life gets hard, remember there's a reward. Since God's goal is to make you like Jesus, He's going to do some things, and it could be complicated. You're going to have to learn some obedience. So don't be surprised, as we heard this morning in the earlier hour, problems are part of becoming. Expect them. I tell the students this all the time, especially those that lean into their faith journey, that as soon as you step outward in your Christian walk, there's this beautiful verse, I don't have it in the outline this morning, but John 10:10, it's my life verse. The evil one comes to kill, crush, and destroy, but Jesus says, I've come to give you the most amazing life ever. So you need to understand, even the conversations we're having as we move into this new season here, that it's not going to come without some opposition, because it's going to make some people a little unsettled. maybe a little concerned about even the conversations we've had about the technology. But at the same time, the idea of how do we together learn to be the kingdom and walk together in this. And so have the conversations, the hard conversations about, who are the folks that we ought to be inviting to be part of this? Who are the people that are needing to be connected to God's story? I mean, we heard some amazing comments last week from two amazing saints in our outpost, as I like to say, from Kay and Margaret, just about the connection they've had and how cool it is that there's longevity in that. But I desire to help find others to come and connect to that same story so they can walk with you and hear your story and hear how God has shown up in your life to encourage you. And so we need to remember this. Again, Hebrews. Jesus did not give up because of the cross. Think about that. I mean, Jesus knew what he was going to... It says, on the contrary, the writer says, because of the joy that was waiting for him, but he had to go through the cross to get there, which is like, that's a really interesting understanding. He thought nothing of the disgrace of dying on the cross, and he is now seated at the right side of God's throne. And I think we have to see that. We have to hang on to that. That if we become discouraged, that's our choice. That's not what God desires for us. And so in those moments when life is tough, like even yesterday, I had a young couple at the house doing some premarital counseling, and it was interesting. They live out of town. As they came to the home, they just admitted that they hadn't talked to each other for the previous 2 days because life was a little complicated in their relationship. But I was so encouraged that coming into that conversation that they were totally transparent about that because they want to do well. They want to be able to celebrate 30, 40, 50 years of marriage. And the fact that they were willing, and it was just funny to sort of like, okay, they actually sent me a picture last night of, it was sort of a little awkward where they told me they were going to go work on some grandma's yard, and there was this hole dug, and actually the bride was in the hole, and he was like shoveling the dirt in on top, which I thought was I get it. I said maybe we should meet again this afternoon, but there's things that aren't quite worked out there. But we need to see that. We need to see that there's these things that even, again, think of what Jesus went through, how he put up with so much hatred from sinners, from us. So do not let yourselves become discouraged and to give up. There's something about life that's beautiful. And even this, after you suffer for a short time, God, who gives all grace, will make everything right. He will make you strong and support you and keep you from falling. He calls you to share in his glory in Christ, a glory that will continue forever. I mean, there's a beauty in that we need to hang on to. And we need to go back even to this verse we saw earlier and be reminded, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Now, we have to be realistic about that. There are moments in life, though, where that's a hard verse to hang on to because we don't get it. We don't get that all things God works for the good. And we think about a daughter who's actually in a police department in Baltimore and wondering, where is she in the midst of this messiness? And knowing that the truth of what's going on in Baltimore, like in many urban centers across the country, is just the brokenness of our culture. We all saw the video of the mom who went after her son, but my question was, where was his dad? Where was his dad? And I can tell you where his dad was. I'm going to guess, statistically, is that dad is totally out of the picture. So why are we surprised that a young man puts on a thug outfit and decides that he's going to go protest? Because he doesn't know any better. Because his dad isn't there to help him understand how to love his mother and how to be a good citizen. And that's just the brokenness of our culture today. So I've given you, this is actually our memory verse for this week. And so the last couple weeks we haven't done that, but would you read it with me together? And it's actually in your handout, and you've got it on the bookmark, so there's no reason why you shouldn't be getting this, okay? Okay, so remember, we start with the verse, and we read the verse, and then we end with the verse. So together, Romans 8:28. Very good. Get it? Got it? Good. Now what do you do with it? Give it away. All right. So at this point I want to invite, we're going to take just a little bit of a turn, invite Bud and Bud Frank and Doug Beilstein to come and join me, which means I need a microphone too, if I can get that. As we're talking about this next step, which is, let's put that slide up here now. Gathering a team to run with me, that we don't do this thing by ourselves. And I suggested this last week even, that we don't, like the grit, remember I talked about grits don't come by themselves. You can't just buy one grit. You actually have to buy a bowl of grits, or you make a bowl of grits, because, and the same with the church. So we are all in this thing together. And so as we think about that, in fact, there's an interesting African proverb that says, to run fast, and you run by yourself. To run far, you have to run with others. To run fast, run by yourself. But to run far, you need to run with others. And so if you think about that, we're getting ready to lean into 200 years of this Kingdom Outpost being in this community and being a presence of the gospel here. And so this morning we want to talk just about a little bit about what that means. So I'll turn it over to you.
What scares me most about being up here this morning is that whether I like it or not, I'm the finance guy. And we have to eventually talk a little about this. Well, I have a question for you, and it's related to Pastor Tom. How many of you have had the opportunity to be with Tom, and he says, let's have a conversation, or we need to have a conversation, or wouldn't it be great to have a conversation? Those buzz statements sometimes scare me, but as I walk through them, it's one of the most joyous occasions I have, because it reminds me of an early conversation I had Tom when he came here for interview. First time he met the session. Seems like 100 years ago, but that's only about 7 or 8 months ago. One of us asked Tom, this is the session, one of us asked Tom, why would you consider being pastor at Linden Road Presbyterian Church? And I'm not sure Tom remembers the answer, but I have never forgot it. He says, and he used the term, you guys have a real gold mine, and I'm not sure that you've identified this. And we're all searching, and I had the vaguest idea what he was talking about. He finally said, you know, this church is located within a half a mile of Mansfield Senior High School. And believe me, the potential that we have here is unbelievable. And this brings into discipleship, and every single month in our session packet, there's a huge list of a report from the pastor, just bullet points, telling us what he is doing, and frankly, challenging us what we should be doing. And these bullet points have 3 categories. One is network meetings. Now, what does network meetings? The second one is ministry related, and you would think that it's all the things that he does here in the church. It's primarily all he does things with networking within the church. And the last one is professional connectional. That's a big word, that phrase really means Tom in his preparation to become a permanent pastor and also be ordained. And he has to learn a lot about a Presbyterian polity. And believe me, if we didn't watch that, that could take an awful lot of his time. But he actually spends 2 days a week working with cohort, other colleagues, working with 2 days a month doing this. And I just want to mention a couple of these things on here. And let's go back to network meetings. And we're talking about discipleship. And he meets with Mansfield pastors of all different churches. And last Tuesday, I asked Nikki, this is in Bridge Day, what's this big crowd in the parking lot? They have all these cars. 19 senior pastors were here, and they had a very positive experience, and they got to know Linden Road Church. And that's the high thing that I want to share with you about being connected. When Jane and I first joined this church, people said, "Where's Linden Road?" And we'd say, "At the end of Maple Street." "Where's Maple Street?" And today we still suffer from that. People don't know where we are, and Tom has made that, and Session is making that the highest agenda. And where I come in just a second, I will share with you that these agenda items and resources take financial resources. The other things that just warms my heart out, and Jane and I could talk about it for a long time. We were invited and privileged to have the youth at our home for a light dinner and Bible study probably a month ago now. And I think we got more out of it than the youth did. And I can honestly say I'm so proud of these kids. They love the Lord. They are really into Bible study. And they just love being at First Linden Road Church. And they love actually being the first group of young people in a long time that really feel that they can make a positive effect and become the disciples. I will defer to my colleague Doug for a minute, where I will chat just for a minute about some very fast number crunching, but Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
The thing that I'd like you to think about is the word connection, or connection. If you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior, then you are a member of a family, of God's family. And there is a significant number of that family in this church. That said, I want to take you out to San Francisco for a second. Marty and I had the privilege to go to a National School Boards convention, if you will. The featured speaker was Harry Belafonte. Okay, and I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. And it certainly was. The crux of this is Harry came home from the service and he didn't have a job. And he didn't learn a skill in the service. So he went to work as an assistant maintenance guy in an apartment building in New York City. And that guy didn't have enough funds to pay him. So he said, "Here, Harry, I want you to take this ticket as part of your wage." And it was a ticket to, what the heck's that theater? Don. Oh, Apollo. There you go. It just went right out of my head. The Apollo Theater in Harlem. A black theater that a lot of highly known, well-known, regarded and respected people have come out of. Okay? And there he experienced his calling, if you will. Okay? And he went backstage after the performance was over, and he begged, borrowed, and steal. He wanted to become their maintenance person. And that was the start of his career. Point is, tickets. Okay? A ticket costs that. Now, let's talk about Linden Road. What is your ticket around here? We have a huge number of tickets that are available. And the session is continuing to provide you with additional tickets. One, Saturday, we're going to have a work day. There are jobs for everybody if you come. The women do a rummage sale that benefits the community. We got pots and pans. Our mission committee sponsored Dare to Share. We sent our kids out to be exposed to the wild, if you will. I had my first rock concert. Unbelievable. And it was really foundational for those kids. They came back here. You saw it in one of the services. Gospel they put on for you. That was their payback to you for that investment. A ticket, if you will. So I want to quick transition now to Presbyterian. A lot of us think, hey, wow, they're just there. But I had the privilege and to go with Tom last week to Presbytery. And you think, well, that's a business meeting, right? Well, about an hour to an hour and a quarter of a 7-hour day was devoted to a business meeting. And we got it done. But it started off with a service. And throughout the day, the service continued. And there were 4 tickets that they provided us. One was the birth of Christ. And we went in with a group of about 20, 25. And we heard a very interesting presentation, a very beautiful presentation of the birth, or God in a sandbox. It's a type of Montessori teaching. It was very, very captivating and very inspirational. And there were 3 other things. There were 4 tickets for us, as well as the service. So it was very interesting. But now I'm going to come to something else. Presbytery, while there is management there, provides tickets for not only the attendees, all of the churches. Okay? And there are 3 or 4 that I want to talk to you about, and it's going to be very short. I'm just going to name them. And they're new ministries. How about the Ruling Elder Transformational Program, where they're taking elders, your session members, if they're so inclined, and helping them on their way to becoming a pastor. Do I hear discipleship here somewhere? Yeah? And we can't do that, but they can do that for us. That's how they're helping us. How about the Retreat Ministry Mission Group? They're trying to reconnect our pastors. They're trying to reconnect congregations where they're just doing business, folks. But they've got to be re-inspired, if you will. So then the other one that I wanted to mention to you is Big Fish. And the interesting part about this is a new one. There are artists all around our fringe. And sometimes they're not invited to join our body here because they somewhat are on the fringe, if you will. Whatever. They might not have confessed or whatever, but in the end, some of them are believers, but they're out there and there's not a connection. And they're trying to figure out a way, and they've got a program to invite artists into the church to express their love of God and to show another spark. Look at this stuff on the side here. You see those stained glass? That's interesting. So that's just one art. I mean, there's poetry, there's music we're being exposed to. Those are the different arts. So those are the things that Presbytery is trying to do for us. Okay? But our challenge is the support of Presbytery. And Bud's going to talk to you here in another minute about it. We've fallen short as a congregation. Every year, we have an assessment. This year it's $28, $29 a member. Some of that goes to Presbytery, some of it goes to General Assembly. And there are people, and I respect them, well, they're doing this, and I don't appreciate that, so I'll withhold my support. And I understand that. But I just gave you 3 or 4 other things that they're doing that you might be able to support. And we are, what I start off with, connectional. So if we're a member, if we believe in that stuff, then we need to support that. One of our budget cuts, last year, and every year I've been here, our session has decided that if our members don't do it, then the church as a whole will pay for your per capita, is where I'm going with it. Okay? This year we're at about a 50% level. And we're in search of funds. And that's one area we cut. Okay? This is going to be the first year, possibly, that we're not going to be able to fund everybody in the church, just the people that funded themselves. So I'd like you to reconsider that. That's my thought here. And Bud will give you some other rationales on where we're going. Here you go, Bud.
Thank you, Dad. Believe me, this is not all doom and gloom. And first I have to say that I'm braggadocious when I meet with other churches and people in stewardship and so forth, because per capita, this church does unbelievable. We're off the chart when we talk about all the special things that we do, and it's just unbelievable how it happens. It's amazing how everything really comes up. Our mission giving is we're way at the top, and we continue to do a good job. The long and short of it, and believe me, I will talk more, have other conversations, and I'd be glad to talk to you or any member session. At the last session meeting, there were some hard choices that were made for cuts, and they represented just under $4,600. And as we talked about this, we didn't talk about we're going to make cuts, but we're also going to talk about how we can, as leaders of the church, how can we have immediate impact? And we spent quite a bit of time praying about this session. And when we got to the bottom line, and we are doing this monthly at the bottom line, but we're projecting through June right now. If a couple things weren't done, we could have almost $11,000 deficit. Now, the $4,600 that we've cut, that is reflected in your finances at a glance, and you notice that the deficit is a little over $5,000. But we still had almost $11,000 that we had to account for if we continue on doing everything we did. So we as a session said we have to be leaders. And everyone, it was a unanimous vote, and of that almost $11,000, the session pledged just under $3,900, increasing in their personal commitment to that. So that brings a balance of around $7,000 that we're looking at. And we're asking you to consider as a body to do that. There's lots of ways you can do it. We can divide it by the number of people that do commit, and if those 46 committed families raise $154, that would balance the budget. We also know that those are quite a few others that could do considerably more than that if they chose. But at this point in time, this is between you and your Lord, and let Nikki go. We're not having a formal campaign. We want to clean this up as soon as we possibly can. And as session members, their commitment actually started as of this Sunday. And so the sooner we can do this, help the session make the final decision. Why the shortfall? There are several reasons. Some of them are obvious. We had an incredible winter. Energy costs were up. Church cancellations. Other reasons were we had the per capita is quite a significant one. And probably the main situation we have is when we were not able to be in church to make that commitment, we had to play catch up on those commitments. I strongly urge you to try the online banking, online funding, and that's extremely easy to do. All you got to do is hit the website and they can walk you through. Nikki can work with you on this. But please, at this point, we ask you to let Nikki know what we can do, and We'd love to have this completed by the third Tuesday of this month, which will be a session meeting. It is positive. From where we were to be a negative 7,000 right now is a quantum leap, and continue praying with us, and I feel that we won't have to have this conversation again, and I thank you for your patience.
Thanks, man. This stuff is always hard to talk about, but I thought as we lean into the message, the idea of, because we want to talk about our time, talent, and resources. And, you know, at the end of the day, we want to trust that God is in the details. And so, this, again, looking at the book of Hebrews, the writer says, let us consider how we can spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another as you see that day approaching. You know, and I want to suggest that one of the reasons why, and it was interesting in the conversation I had with the senior pastors that were here, and it was, you know, Dave Vance, who's the new guy at Crossroads, and Nate Myers, who's the new guy at Berean, and a number of other pastors. And I got it was amazing, I got an actual really cool note from Dave Vance saying that he was incredibly encouraged because I took the conversation over. I tend to do that in one direction. I mean, sorry, but because I didn't want it being about us showing up with our pamphlets and distributing, okay, here's what we're doing and here's what they're doing. It's like, that's not it. But I really believe that as the kingdom, as leaders, as spiritual leaders of this community, and partly I chastised them because out of the 19 that were there, I was the only pastor that showed up for the Men Coalition walk a couple Saturdays ago. Now, I don't do those things. I've never been part of a demonstration, but I wanted to say to the community that I am a pastor of a local church, and I believe that the issues that I see in Mansfield Senior when I go in every Tuesday as I walk the hallways, they're spiritual issues. No different than what's going on in Baltimore. That's a spiritual issue. The fact that fathers create children and walk away from them means that they don't understand their God-given calling. And so our role together, and we really haven't had this conversation. I mean, I don't like talking about finances, but it does take resources. I mean, if you've hosted the teams, I mean, last week, I actually 2 weeks ago, I took and said I would host, and so I bought, it's $45 is about what you spend. I mean, I bought enough tacos for our 10 kids to have. I mean, it's not a cheap endeavor. But that's okay. It's because it's money in investing in them, because if you build food in front of them of whatever shape, short, or size, you know, they will come. I think, at least so I've seen. Snacks are important because it's that common table that we share together. But that's an investment, and that's something that's a little bit new, and not something when you did your stewardship campaign last September that you really had talked about. But I think also, and it's in the context of talking about this gathering a team to run with me, this point 5 is that, you know, why do we get stuck? Why do we stop growing? It's because we're uncertain of the future. That we're afraid of failing, that we don't even try. But see, back to the initial conversation that I had with your PNC, as I heard about Maumee, even though I know there's some messiness around that because we really haven't figured out yet what we're doing with it. The fact that you as a congregation and some of your core leadership said, we're going to do this, even though we're not sure where God's calling us to be, I think is a huge thing. I think it reflects the nature of your willing to be a risk taker, and I think it actually falls into the DNA of being part of what is now known as Linden Road that was First United Downtown. I mean, there's something about that I think, and realizing too that, you know, I can't even imagine what it must be like to be a pastor in the city of Baltimore right now. I mean, I was this close to getting in my car and driving to show a statement of solidarity because we have to figure this out. And Mansfield is not much different in Baltimore in that regard. When we talk about the issue of fatherlessness and the issue of kids that are broken, and there's some things that the community is trying to figure out. But when I went to the press conference, and again, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I'll remind you that, you know, the chief of police is saying, we need your help. You that are in the spiritual community, we need your help because we know that we can put these guys in prison, we can put them in jail, we can get them off the street for a moment, but we can't fix the problem until we figure out that spiritual. Why are they doing the crack? Why are they doing the heroin? Why are they being just knuckleheads? And it's because they're trying to find a place in God. In God's story. And that's the place that I think we need to continue to pray about what that means for us. And so, as we move forward here, point 6. Let me just back up. Being loved and belonging then gives us courage to become something. And that's really what our conversation is this morning. Point 6. Remember, God is cheering me on at every stage. That this is what God's called us to be. And we know that there's a promise of Scripture that it's going to happen. No one shames a baby for not talking. The dad's trying to get him to say dad, dad before mama kind of thing. Or we don't give a 10-year-old a hard time because they don't drive. It's just we don't do that because none of us should be ashamed at whatever stage you're at. And particularly those of you that are in, I'm going to chase those of you that are in your retirement years, you have more to offer the kingdom now than you've ever had. In terms of your time and your talent and your resources. And we as a church need to figure out how to leverage that because that's one of the interesting statistics about Facebook. Facebook is dying. And it's dying because the teens are looking for a new on-ramp. But at the same time, where it has peaked a little bit, but it still isn't peaked enough to stay off the students, is that grandparents are joining Facebook. Because they want to see their grandkids. And the kids don't want mom and dad or grandparents to have access to their social graph. And so, life changes when your mom becomes your friend on Facebook, I think. So I've been told. When you're ashamed, and some of us sometimes do that, and maybe because we think we don't have anything to offer, maybe in terms of resources, because of a limited income. But there is your time that you can invest. In terms of the various things that we offer here in the church. Even on Saturday when we come together to do the cleaning up outside, just what a cool thing that is. Point 7, take every step with purpose. That we need to think about everything we do here in the building, everything we do in terms of programming and our budget resources, we need to think about it with intentionality. It needs to be purposeful. It needs to be focused. Don't waste any step or any energy or any of your time, talent, or resources. You need to be disciplined. You will have to deny yourself many things to become. And Paul's just filled with all sorts of things that he's said here. Talking about athletes, he says, all athletes practice strict self-control. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. So I run straight to the goal with purpose in every step. I am not like a boxer who misses his punches, which that was last night, right? Somebody missed, I don't know how many rounds it went, but I didn't watch. But great. And then finally, realize that what I don't finish, God will. We just need to be faithful. And that's the one thing I love about where you've been as a church. And I don't know if any of you saw the story this week on the news, and I just want to show a quick clip here. Did you see the story about the guy that was playing, Brian Sperry, 89-year-old football player? Did you see this? His grandson wanted to play football, so it was interesting. They actually let him carry the touchdown. And so here's an interesting conversation he had with his grandson.
Brian, was it your intent simply to get the ball and run a couple of feet? Because you took off running. What did it feel like?
It was interesting, to say the least. I had in mind for getting out toward the end somewhere and maybe getting 5 or 10 yards. But one of the fellows that was the quarterback, he says, no, we want you over here right in front of me. And says, I'll throw you the ball and then you can go.
Yeah, wow, and you certainly did. Gosh, and everybody was rallying behind you. Brian, what was it like when you used to play football before you went to war and you're out on the field, the crowd's around you? What was it like to experience everybody, just feeling your same enthusiasm? And did your skills come back? Was it like riding a bike?
Oh, it's interesting. I hadn't run for a long time, years, and never even thought about it. I did think about catching the ball, but not running. But I just turned around and started to run, and the guys made a place for me to go. They had a big time.
I love that. I mean, I turned around and I ran, and the guys made a place for me to go. And so if you think about that in your own story, the things that are going to be coming forward, I mean, I know that there's a couple projects at the community level that they're going to be looking for mentors. They're going to be looking for people who are willing to risk an investment in students. 1,600 students at Mansfield Senior. Statistically, 250 of them are considered to be homeless, which I just find extraordinary. But what that means is that they've been kicked out of their home, and so they literally live from home to home to home. And if you are a parent of a teen, you know of kids that fit that bill. And then we wonder why we can't educate them, and we wonder why the dropout rate is what it is. We talked with some students at the DeWalt Center about there's a number of teens that are pregnant, moms that the kids were joking about, they're ready to burst, and I'm just thinking, I wasn't ready to become a dad at age 27. How in heaven's name do you do that and try to do your educational piece at the same time? But you know what? You may struggle in the race, but the reality is we all have. You may have stumbled in the race, and the truth is we all have. And you may have been sidelined, but I want you to hear that our race isn't over. Yours individually and ours corporately. It's in this family called Linden Road that you can be loved and that you can belong, and more importantly, that you can become what God has always intended. One of the things I'm hoping we can roll out in the fall is the idea of small groups, of how do we create smaller opportunities, smaller platoons, if you will, of people who love Jesus and want to love on the community and get to know each other. And I want us to hear that as your pastor, I want this place to be a place for people who want to become who God calls them to be, and to help us figure that out. And we're beginning to work on some tools and some resources that over the coming months I think we can launch that. And I just want you to know, as your pastor, I'm committed to help you finish your race. It's never too late, just like Brian. I mean, this is a great story. Because there's opportunities, we can set it up and we can let you go and carry the ball and score the touchdown. And so I guess my question to you is, are you ready to start running again? Are you ready to lead into the race? Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your life that you've given us through your Son Jesus, and as we work through these things, just the realities of what it means to be an outpost of the kingdom, and the realities of what it means to be connected. We just pray that in the midst of all that we would be encouraged, that we would encourage each other on to good works, and that we'd see the places you called us to be as your people. And we just pray for a sense of generosity, and also for a sense of just growth and encouragement as we wrestle through what it is that we are in these remaining years before our 200th anniversary. How do we set that up so that we actually begin the stage for the next 100 years? Just to be faithful in what you desire to do, knowing that the world looks a lot different than when this church was planted in downtown Mansfield. And yet we want to be just as relevant. And so as we lead together in this, may we have many conversations together about how you've called us and how we've been encouraged. And we just trust you in the details. And we just thank you for all that you give us. And we just pray your presence now as we go through the rest of our time together this morning. And all God's people said, Amen.